Hello everybody, it's Father Edward Looney, and I know that this isn't a Belgian roadside chapel, but nevertheless, here we are, down close to the Madison area. I'm not exactly sure even what town I'm near, but I think it's close to Hill Point is what I remember. And this is a little chapel here in the middle of the hills. You can see, looking out, that it's a very hilly area. And this little chapel is on the location of the place that used to be St. Patrick's Church. So you see St. Patrick's Cemetery. It has a sign that says Shrine, and it's actually dedicated to Our Lady of the Fields. So I'd like to take you in and show you this chapel of Our Lady of the Fields. Some of these places that I find, I do so through a Facebook group page that I belong to on the internet, and it's called Forgotten Wisconsin. And so my trip today is all about forgotten Wisconsin posts that I have seen. So let's go in. As we enter the little chapel, you can see here many of the beautiful things here in this chapel. Whoa. You can see here this beautiful chapel as we've entered it now, and this image of Our Lady of the Field. She's holding grain there. A beautiful little altar area. Apparently it was recently renovated. So just looking around, you see the Stations of the Cross there. And you have St. Isidore the Farmer right there. It's a beautiful little chapel, and I'd like to share with you the history of the chapel. It says that on Wednesday, October 1st, 1958 at 3 p.m., Bishop William Patrick O'Connor rededicated a small chapel in the parish of St. Patrick, Plain, Wisconsin. This chapel, once known as the Old Chapel, has been renamed in honor of Our Lady of the Fields. Our Lady of the Fields Chapel. Our Lady of the Fields Chapel crowns one of the highest hills in the northwestern part of the Diocese of Madison, 1 mile west off of County G, south of Highway 154. And it goes on to give more highway addresses. Perfectly situated as a rural place of pilgrimage to Our Lady, the chapel commands the attention of the historian. Goes on to tell about the original site of St. Patrick's, a second church, and this present chapel built in 1903 in the cold of winter. It remained as a remembrance of the stormy past of a struggling infant parish used only on All Souls Day and for a very few funerals. Now the faithful pioneers lay buried in the chapel cemetery, and little would they recognize the chapel since its renovation this year. Has white new aluminum siding, dark brown trim, green shingles, and copper lightning rods. The chapel stands as a living symbol of the parish's faith and the gift of God and Mary. The altar's picture of Our Lady of the Fields was donated by Mr. Everett Gavin of West Allis, whose parents are buried in the chapel cemetery. Numerous other donations were given by the relatives of deceased friends of the parish. So there you have it. There is the little history of the chapel. And I thought it would be fitting just to close with a prayer to Our Lady of the Fields. O blessed Lady of the Fields, who loved the land of thy native Galilee, who watched the tiller of the earth and shepherded the flock go out and return from Nazareth, who lived without and returned from, who lived and loved the rural folk of the village, look down graciously upon the fields and pastures of this, thy adopted land. Make our homes sanctuaries of Christ, as was thy home. Make our fields fertile and abundant in the harvest. Help us understand more fully the dignity of our toil and the merit it requires when offered through thee to thy divine Son, Jesus Christ, with the Father and the Holy Spirit, lives and reigns forever and ever. I'd like to thank you for joining me as we visited this little chapel to Our Lady of the Fields, a chapel only once used for All Souls Day. How appropriate for me to share this video with you then, on November 2nd of All Souls Day.